The cost of running government has ballooned beyond reason. But who is really paying for it? And more importantly, who is profiting? This is not just economics. This is the architecture of inequality, designed, maintained, and justified by those who sit at the very top. When a government decides to spend billions renovating the very building from which they already govern, while children sit in bare floors in underfunded classrooms, it's not a question of lack of resources, it is a question of priorities. When you follow the money, you start to notice that the numbers are never random. Hi everyone, welcome to Civic Room. Did you know that what government does with money is an indication of that government's priorities? In Nigeria, tens of billions of naira are earmarked for the renovation of government buildings. Marble floors, imported furniture, and freshly polished corridors of power. Meanwhile, millions of Nigerians live in homes without electricity, without water, and without basic security. The cost of running government has ballooned beyond reason. But who is really paying for it? And more importantly, who is profiting? This is not just economics. This is the architecture of inequality, designed, maintained, and justified by those who sit at the very top. You see, when a government decides to spend billions renovating the very building from which they already govern, while children sit in bare floors in underfunded classrooms, it's not a question of lack of resources, it is a question of priorities. When you follow the money, you start to notice that the numbers are never random. 27 billion here, 18 billion there, 2 billion for a single media outreach. Every zero has a destination. Every allocation has a beneficiary. And most times, it is not the Nigerian people. In Nigeria, budgets are not just financial documents. They are political manifestos in disguise. Coded messages about who matters and who doesn't. When you read them carefully, they reveal the power structure in this country more clearly than the Constitution. The system is not broken. The system is working exactly as designed. It is meant to concentrate wealth at the top and distribute just enough crumbs to keep everybody else distracted or divided to ask questions. Consider this. While billions of investments in renovating government buildings are allocated, there are primary schools in this country that only have one teacher for an entire community. Roads that were promised in 2017 appear in the budget every single year, yet remains nothing but potholes. These are not accidents, they are features of the design. But here is where it gets more dangerous. Budgets are never that simple. They are never about money in this country. They are about power retention. Every inflated project is a political tool, a reward to loyal contractor, a funding channel for election wars, a way to keep the patronage network alive and well. And when the election season comes, those funds comes back into play as logistics, for cash, food, even motorcycles handed out to buy votes. This is why the architecture of inequality is so difficult to dismantle in this country. It is not built on bricks or mortar. It is built on relationships, on silent agreements, on a culture of political impunity so deep that when you raise questions, you are told to be realistic or you are told to be silent. Yet, the reality is that as long as the budget continue to serve those at the very top, the gap between the governors and the governed will only grow wider. No matter how much you pray, no matter how much you hope or wish for things to change, if you do not understand the system, you cannot disrupt it. Nigeria's addiction to bloated governance didn't start in 2025. It's a story decades in the making. A slow, deliberate inflation of cost of leadership, while the nation human development indicators flatlined. The tragedy is that successive administrations talked about cutting the cost of governance, but almost always ended up expanding it. Committees were formed to reduce waste, and those committees themselves became another layer of costs. There is a sound that started in 2024 and never quite stopped. It began very small, then it grew into viral tweets, WhatsApp forwards, and eventually an organized cry that filled the streets. It became the End Bad Government movement. Days of national anger, of ordinary people refusing to be polite about their suffering. Listen to those voices, and you will hear the same thing in different languages. Those messages were primitive. They were necessary truths. They were the language of people who had watched promises of governance wrought into excuses. There's an important civic point here. When citizens march, they are not just asking for pocket money. Protests are signal, loud public signal that the social contract is failing. When those signals multiply and the state respond with force rather than answers, we are watching a very dangerous slide. Amnesty International's independent investigation into the August 2024 protests found that police used excessive, often lethal force. At least 24 people were killed in multiple states, and more than 1,000 were detained. That kind of response does not resolve grievances. It amplifies them. It tells people that speaking up will cost them bodily harm and imprisonment. Civil society tried to translate that rage into policy pressure. Organizations mounted petitions, filed freedom of information requests, produced budget analyses, and marched in solidarity. Budget and other watchdogs long made the argument that the National Assembly's in session over 11,000 projects, nearly 7 trillion in the 2025 budget, were a symptom of how political bargaining reshapes public priority to reward networks rather than people. You see, those in sessions were widely criticized as political agenda masquerading as development. Civil society groups used those findings to demand explanation. Who benefits from these projects? Why were they inserted without clear delivery plan? And what accountability exists for these projects? But there's a very important civic reality here. It is the shrinking civic space. The Civicus Monitor lists Nigeria as repressed. When civil society operates under pressure, when its ability to protest, report, litigate, and educate is constrained, the channel that then translates street anger into institutional reform weakens. So, in that case, people shout, but their voices bounces off closed doors. And for me, that is not an abstract problem. It is strategic. A shrinking civic space has two effects. One, it makes it riskier for citizens to organize, which reduces probability of sustained movements that can outlast political cycles. Two, it squeezes watchdogs so that budget oversight becomes under-resourced. The result is less accountability and more cover for waste. When you peel back the layers of Nigeria's bloated governance cost, the pattern is almost always the same. The pain is public, the profit is private. 54 trillion naira is the 2025 budget. Like many before that, it's not a simple spreadsheet of figures. It is a treasure map. And if you know where to look, you will see exactly why it is like that. You will see who is feasting while other people in this country tighten up their belts. First is the political elites. The allocation for legislative aid that the average Nigeria has no idea what they are doing. Lawmakers take home salaries and allowances so padded that even oil executives would envy them. And then the constituency projects that only exist on paper, with contractors who are often relatives or political associates collecting full payments for jobs abandoned halfway or even never started at all. Then there are the ministers, the ministries, and the agencies. Budgets are written with deliberate vagueness, with intention to swallow millions without producing a tangible outcome. Procurement processes are weaponized, turning even the purchase of office chairs into multi-naira deals. But who gets those contracts? They are often companies with no track record, registers to proxies of the same officers who are awarding the contracts. At the center of it all are the contractors. Many are not in business to serve the public, but are there to serve the system. They understand that the true value of contracts within the system is not in completing it, it is in inflating it. A borehole that should cost 2 million appears in the budget at 20 million. A road that could be completed in 6 months is deliberately stretched to 3 years, ensuring multiple payments, multiple variations, and multiple excuses. You know, the worst part about all of these things is that when the money moves, it doesn't trickle down. It flows sideways into offshore accounts, luxury apartments in Dubai and London, high-rise apartments in Banana Island, and campaign war vaults for the next election. The truth is, the Nigerian budget has never been just about public service. It is a complex machinery of reward, loyalty, and political survival. And as long as those who write it also benefit from it, the cycle will remain unbroken. The numbers in the budget are not abstract. They translate into daily realities of Nigerians. And when the cost of running government swallows the bulk of national resources, what is left for the people is crumbs. Sometimes not even that. A democracy survives not on elections, but on the vibrancy of its civic space. The arena where citizens speak, organize, and hold leaders accountable. In reality, the civic space is shrinking. The combination of rising government costs and political insecurity is creating an environment where civil society struggle to breathe. When civic space shrinks, the government becomes so arrogant because governance becomes sideways. The government speaks, the people listen. It becomes a one-way communication. It's no longer a dialogue. Suppressing the voice of the people is not just undemocratic, it is self-destructive. If Nigeria is to correct its cause, citizens must have the freedom, the resources, and the platform to speak without fear. The fight to reduce cost of governance is inseparable from the fight to protect civic space. Without both, reforms will remain paper promises. Public awareness is not just about knowing the truth. It's about feeling its weight. And once citizens understand how much is being wasted and what could be gained by redirecting those funds, the demand for change becomes unstoppable. The most underestimated force in Nigerian politics is sustained public pressure. Government rarely reform themselves out of goodwill. They do so when the cost of ignoring the people becomes higher than the cost of change. Cutting the cost of governance is not just a leadership responsibility, it is a civic responsibility. Citizens must be more than spectators. We must be active participants in holding leaders accountable. Here are 5 ways citizens can shape real reform in reducing cost of governance. 1. Consistent advocacy, not seasonal outrage. Nigerians are quick to protest a scandal for a few weeks, but then the noise fades. Meanwhile, the wasteful spending continues quietly. Lasting change requires ongoing and structured advocacy, not just trending hashtags. 2. Demanding transparency as a right, not a favor. We must insist that government budgets, contracts, and expenditure reports are public and accessible. If we don't know how much is being spent, we cannot demand it to be reduced. The era of government knows best must give way for citizens to actually own it and know that they can stop it. 3. Localizing the pressure. It's not enough to shout in Abuja. Every state assembly, local government, ministry must feel the heat. Waste at the top is mirrored at the grassroots. As citizens, we must monitor and challenge excesses in political environments. 4. Using elections as a weapon. Politicians fear losing elections more than they fear bad press. This is where, for me, the candidate is more important than the party. Let us elect people who commit to fiscal discipline, regardless of party affiliations. 5. Organizing beyond ethnic and political divides. Wasteful governance hurts Nigerians, no matter the tribe or party. Coalitions between civic groups, unions, religious leaders, and even the media can create a united front that politicians cannot easily dismiss. A passive citizenry is the best friend of a wasteful government. An informed, organized, and persistent people can force reforms that even the most reluctant politician cannot resist. Public participation is not just about protest, it's about sustained engagement. So, stay engaged, stay organized, stay focused. This is Civic Room with Menketi, and I'll see you in the next episode.